The first time Lucas mentioned the regional sales retreat, he said it with the casual shrug of someone tossing a sweater into an overnight bag. "Just 2 nights in Napa," he assured me, palms open in the classic pose of practiced innocence. Same PowerPoints, same tepid coffee, same guys arguing about whether Tesla is overvalued. "I'll be back Sunday before the Giants game." I kissed him anyway, because that is what you do when you have shared a bathroom for 7 years and can recite each other's cholesterol numbers. You choose the version of the story that keeps the floorboards from creaking. But the floorboards creaked all Friday night while he was gone. Our dog, Harper, kept pacing to Lucas's side of the bed, sniffing the absence as if she too sensed the outline of something newly hollow. I told myself it was the October wind pressing against the 1920s windows. I told myself a lot of things. Saturday I drove to the city to return the blazer I'd ordered online, too boxy in the shoulders. And on the way home I took the exit for the Golden Gate instead of the Bay Bridge, because the fog looked theatrical and I wanted to feel small inside something beautiful. Halfway across the span my phone buzzed. A single text from Lucas. Keynote ran long. "Dinner with the team at 9. Might be too swamped to call. Love you." I typed back a thumbs up emoji, the yellow pixelated cheer that means nothing and everything. Then I tucked the phone into the cup holder and screamed into the hollow of my car. The scream tasted like tin and relief that I did not plan to go to Napa. That is important to state up front. I am not the woman who sifts through pockets or memorizes mileage. I still believe privacy is the last civil liberty. But the fog followed me off the bridge, and the 101 on-ramp was clogged with weekend traffic. And the next thing I knew I was steering north instead of south, the vineyards scrolling past like a silent green film. I told myself I would not stop. I only wanted to see the hotel, the way a child stares at the closed door of a parent's office. Not to open it, just to feel the grain of the wood beneath her palm. The Meritage Resort crouches at the southern lip of the valley, a Tuscan fantasy fortress ringed by olive trees that have never endured an Italian winter. I left my car with the valet before I could change my mind, then walked inside as though I belonged to a bachelorette party that had drifted off to taste cabernets. The lobby is built around an artificial vineyard that grows indoors under skylights. An idea someone once thought luxurious and now feels like a Vegas rendition of agrarian life. I sat on a velvet settee facing the bar, ordered a sparkling water from a server who called me miss instead of ma'am, and opened the book I had absent-mindedly tossed into my tote that morning. The Remains of the Day. A fitting selection, though I did not yet know how fitting. I read 3 pages, or rather, I moved my eyes across them. Every few minutes I glanced at the elevator bay, half hoping Lucas would emerge in his wrinkled blue suit, half praying he would not. At 8:47 p.m. the elevator dinged and out spilled a cluster of people I recognized from the company's holiday parties. Marcus from HR, Priya with a lilting laugh, and Lucas's regional manager, Janet, who once told me my earrings looked like little galaxies. They were dressed not for corporate drudgery, but for Saturday night. Janet in a backless emerald dress, Priya in suede boots that rose to the knee. Lucas was not among them. I exhaled, equal parts vindicated and disappointed. They crossed the lobby laughing, the timbre of vacation, and settled at a corner table. I could not hear them over the clinking of glasses, the generic thump of lounge music. Then Janet said something that made the whole group pause, and in the hush her voice carried. "Let's not mention the spa vouchers tomorrow. The SOs think we're grinding PowerPoints, remember?" The word SOs, significant others, landed like a dart in the center of my forehead. I felt my pulse in places I had forgotten had arteries. Still, I could have left. I could have stood, smoothed my jeans, and walked back into the night. Instead, I opened the Notes app and typed, "spa vouchers." As if cataloging evidence would later make sense of the anesthesia spreading through my limbs. At 9:11 the elevator opened again, and Lucas stepped out. He wore the navy Henley I had given him last Christmas, the one that brings out the slate in his irises, and his hair was still damp from a shower. On his arm, fingers curled just below the roll of his sleeve, was a woman I had never seen. She was tall in the effortless way that makes petite women like me instinctively square their shoulders. Long black hair parted in the middle, face angled as if perpetually ready for a photographer who wasn't there. They walked past the artificial vineyard, past my settee, so close I could smell his bergamot shampoo. Neither looked at me, I did not follow them. I sat, frozen, while the server replaced my untouched water with a fresh one, mistaking paralysis for thirst. They exited through the French doors onto the terrace where strands of Edison bulbs flickered like captive stars. I could see the outline of their bodies merge into one shadow against the vineyard beyond. Then the shadow tilted, and her head rested on his shoulder, and something inside me that had been knitted tightly for years began to unravel with the violence of a snagged scarf. Time passed. How much, I couldn't say. I read the same paragraph 7 times. What can we ever gain in forever looking back and blaming ourselves if our lives have not turned out quite as we might have wished? I highlighted the sentence in yellow, as though Stevens the butler were speaking directly to me, offering absolution or indictment. I could not decide. At 10:43 they returned, her lipstick slightly depleted, his collar askew. They lingered near the elevator. I stood, legs trembling, and walked toward them, slow, deliberate steps across marble that suddenly felt like ice. I stopped 10 feet away, behind a column wrapped in fairy lights. She reached up to smooth the hair at his temple, the intimate gesture of someone who has catalogued another's cowlicks. He caught her wrist, kissed the inside of her palm, then let her go. The elevator swallowed her whole. Lucas turned back toward the bar, adjusting his shirt, and that was when he saw me. We stood in the artificial twilight, the air thick with fermented grapes and the burnt sugar scent of betrayal. His face cycled through colors I had never seen on human skin. Ash, then crimson, then a gray that reminded me of meat gone bad. I felt oddly calm, as though I were the one who had rehearsed this scene. "Claire," he said, my name leaving his mouth like a broken wing. I held up a hand. Not a slap, just a boundary. The lobby music shifted to a cover of Fast Car. The irony so tidy it felt plagiarized. I walked past him, past the emerald dress laughing in the corner, past the server who would go home with $43 in tips and a story about the woman who cried into a book about butlers. I walked until the automatic doors sighed open, and the valley night pressed its cool palms against my cheeks. He followed, of course. They always do in the moment they realize the bridge is already ablaze behind them. Let me explain. For syllables that have never explained a single thing, I kept walking across the circular drive, gravel popping beneath my sneakers like tiny fireworks. When I reached my car, the valet, a kid with acne and earnest eyes, looked from my face to Lucas's and understood instantly that the transaction he was about to make was more than automotive. He handed me the keys as though passing a baton. Lucas grabbed the door before I could close it. "It's not what you think." The classic chorus. I stared at his hand on the window frame, the same hand that had held mine during his father's funeral, that had coaxed basil to grow in terracotta pots on our balcony, that had circled my waist in the kitchen just last week while we debated whether to order Thai or Indian. I thought of all the future moments that hand would now miss. The birthdays, the flat tires, the ordinary Tuesdays that make up a life. The loss felt astronomical and miniature at once, like mourning a constellation you once used to navigate. "Get your hand off the car," I said quietly. Not a request, not a threat, just the articulation of a new country whose borders he had redrawn without consultation. He stepped back. I drove away, the rearview mirror framing him beneath the porte-cochere, a man already smaller than the idea I had carried of him. The 101 South was empty except for truckers and insomniacs. I rolled the windows down and let the valley's cold whip my hair into knots. At some point I pulled over at a vista point, the bay glinting below like spilled coins, and screamed again. This time not into the hollow of a car, but into the open throat of the world. It sounded like a kettle boiling over, like a hinge finally giving way. Harper, had she been there, would have howled in solidarity. I arrived home as the sky blushed with dawn. The blazer I meant to return still lay across the passenger seat, impossibly boxy, a garment meant for a woman who no longer existed. Inside, I made coffee that tasted like soil and sat on the couch we had picked from an estate sale, the one with the faded cabbage roses. I opened my laptop and created a new folder labeled Lease. I looked at our books commingled on the shelves, our vacation magnets mapping a relationship in miniature, Portland, Austin, Oaxaca. Each city a promise that had now expired like outdated visas. Lucas texted at 7:12 a.m., "I'm coming home. We can fix this." I deleted the message without responding, then opened a new note and began a list. Call landlord about breaking lease. Find studio north of the bridge, light dog friendly. Separate finances. Change Netflix password. Breathe. The last item I typed 3 times, as though repetition could make it true. He arrived as I was labeling moving boxes with a Sharpie that smelled like elementary school. The key turned in the lock, the sound, I realized, of a door closing on 7 years. And then he was standing amid the half-packed ruins, eyes bloodshot, shirt still creased with her handprint. He carried a grocery bouquet of white tulips, the kind you buy at 6 a.m. when nothing else is open, apology wrapped in cellophane. I ended it, he said. Last night. It was already ending. I kept folding a sweater, a green cashmere one he had given me the previous Hanukkah, smoothing the sleeves as though it were an infant. Good for you, I replied. The words tasted metallic, like I had bitten through a fork that he set the tulips on the counter, unaware that white tulips symbolize forgiveness in some cultures, surrender in others. I was scared, he continued. About turning 35, about the mortgage conversations, about... I held up the same hand I had used in the lobby, now flecked with Sharpie ink. I'm not your therapist, Lucas. I'm the epilogue you wrote for yourself. His shoulders caved, and for a moment I saw the boy he had once been, the one who cried during up and sent me postcards from business trips addressed to my favorite person. That boy was now collateral damage, and I could not afford to rescue him. I can sleep on the couch, he offered. You can sleep somewhere else. I said it gently, because cruelty is a luxury I have never coveted, that he left with a single duffel, the same bag he had carried to the retreat. I watched from the window as he loaded the car, the tulips abandoned on the counter, like a still life titled Too Late. Harper whined, sensing vacancy, so I knelt and pressed my face into her neck, breathing the loyal scent of dog and comforter. At 9:03 a.m. I called my best friend Maya, who answered on the first ring as though she had been waiting all night. I managed 4 words, it happened, before my voice cracked like winter ice. She arrived within an hour bearing bagels, legal advice, and the kind of anger that feels like being wrapped in flame-retardant wool. We sat on the floor and ate everything carb, smearing grief with strawberry cream cheese. By evening the apartment smelled of cardboard and resolve. I plugged in the diffuser Lucas hated, eucalyptus and mint, and let it run until the air felt medicinal. I played Joni Mitchell, then Lizzo, then the Indigo Girls, cycling through the stages of female recovery in chronological order. When the sun set, I stepped onto the balcony and watched the city blink on, each light a tiny promise that the world continued whether your heart was intact or not. That night I slept 9 hours straight, the abyss of exhaustion deeper than betrayal. I dreamed of the indoor vineyard, the fake grapes neon under plexiglass skylights. But in the dream the vines were real, bursting through the floor, wrapping around my ankles, pulling me not downward but upward, through the roof, into a sky so wide it had no memory of hands or lies. That I woke before the alarm, Harper's chin on my shin, and felt something unexpected: hunger. I made eggs with cheddar, toasted the last of the bagels, brewed coffee that tasted like coffee instead of punishment. While I ate, I opened the blazer box, removed the offending garment, and folded it for donation. Someone taller, broader, more hopeful would wear it to an interview, a date, a life not yet collapsed. At 8 a.m. sharp I emailed my landlord, CCNG Maya's lawyer cousin. I canceled the couple's therapy session we had scheduled for next week. Communication tune-up. The calendar entry had read, irony now a renewable resource. I texted Lucas, we will communicate through attorneys. Please respect the boundary. Then I blocked his number, the digital equivalent of drawing a chalk line around what was no longer mine to resuscitate. By noon I had found a studio in Sausalito with bay windows and a landlord who accepted dogs with deposit. I booked movers, forwarded mail, and changed every password that had ever merged our initials. Each click felt like popping a stitch I had thought permanent, revealing skin that had healed underneath without my noticing. Weeks later, at a wine bar with Maya, a man will ask me about the book I'm reading. The remains of the day, the same copy from that night, spine now cracked with seawater and sun. I will tell him it's about a butler who learns too late that loyalty is not the same as living. He will buy me a glass of Gruner, and I will accept, because I have learned that accepting does not equal indebtedness. We will talk about constellations, about dogs, about the strange mercy of starting over at 34. When he asks for my number, I will give it, not as a promise but as a possibility. But that comes later. For now, I stand in the half-empty living room, tape gun in hand, sealing boxes with the efficiency of someone who has finally understood that the story she thought was epilogue is actually chapter 1. Harper barks at the echo, tail wagging like a metronome keeping time for whatever music comes next. Outside, the October sky is so blue it feels theatrical, but the light is real, and it falls across the floorboards without a single creak.